And for our main story today, let's talk about feminism. Now, I know some of you are clutching your pearls thinking, oh, she can't say the F word in class. Well, I just did, and I will many more times throughout this segment, because it's something that needs to be said, and it needs to be said proudly. I used to joke that I wanted to be a radical feminist activist when I grew up. But then one day, a gentleman asked me what exactly I meant by that. Not that gentleman, although that would have been so unbelievably awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Patrick Stewart actively and openly speaks out against domestic violence. So that is one more reason to love the night. Anyways, back to our topic tonight. I began to delineate my core manifesto, and as I did, I realized that there was nothing even remotely radical about any of the ideas I was suggesting. So let's unpack this a little, and let's start on the topic of rape. Because rape isn't just a problem for college campuses, the military, sports teams, and politicians running for office. It's a problem that we as a society have and sincerely need to address. RAIN estimates that 17.7 million women in America and 2.78 million men will be the victims of attempted or completed rape in their lifetimes. That breaks down to 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men. Now, when those statistics are expanded to encompass broader sexual assault, it jumps up to 44.6% of women and 22.2% of men. To give you an idea, this breaks down to a sexual assault in America every 107 seconds. And in case I haven't put a big enough hole in your bucket of hope, let me empty it completely for you. Because the figures for childhood sexual assault are even more devastating, disgusting, and truly, truly disheartening. So, why is this? And what can be done? You see, sexual assault remains one of the most underreported crimes. It's estimated that out of every 100 sexual assaults, 68% are never reported due to stigma and other factors. Of the 32 that do report, only 7 will go from detectives to the prosecution's office. Only 3 of those will go forward to be prosecuted and go to trial, and only 2 of those will result in any sort of punishment or jail time for the offender. Now, why is this? And what else is going on here? Well, part of what's going on here is that we have a backlog of potentially hundreds of thousands of untested rape kits in this country. Rape kits, or sexual assault examinations, are completed by a forensic nurse after a rape is reported and potentially hold the DNA of the rapist. So it would make sense that we would go ahead and test this and input it into the computer, and voila, CSI stuff happens and our perp goes to jail, right? Well, no, we don't do this by and large. In Detroit alone, there are 11,000 untested rape kits. And as I said, there are potentially hundreds of thousands throughout the country. But there is hope. The NYPD recently tested some of their rape kits and found 2,000 matches. In Cleveland, they found 2,285 matches, 200 of which were serial offenders responsible for 600 separate assaults. In Houston, 6,600 untested kits were ran for DNA and 850 matches were found. So we have this technology, we know it can work, and if these women are brave enough to come forward despite the stigma, the least we as a society can do for them is demand that we test their kits. Here's the thing, most states don't have any idea how many untested rape kits they have. They don't have any idea how many kits are even submitted. They don't have any standard protocol for testing kits, have no idea of the backlog, and the legislatures by and large don't care to fund the effort. We find millions of dollars to fund testing of urine for people who want to get food stamps to make sure they aren't on drugs. And for the record, I've ferreted out exactly one case of drug use, and yet we can't find any money to test rape kits. This isn't to say that there aren't efforts being made. You see, Florida is trying to pass a legislation that will say kids have to be tested within 120 days, and Arizona is working on a similar bill saying that the kids have to be tested within 30 days. However, we shouldn't consider this good enough, because once the kit is tested within, let's say, 120 days, or submitted for testing with 120 days, it's still going to take potentially an additional 6 months to get results. So, for quick math, that means an additional 10 months that a rapist is potentially out victimizing more people. So, surely, let's take a moment and become interested in this topic and talk about it and write our legislatures and try to get moving on this. All right, so while we are having a serious question and answer and discussion about society, let's take a brief moment because I would like to directly address the 15 states that still allow and force impregnated women to sue their rapist in order to terminate parental rights of the rapist. Yes, that is right. 15 states force the victims to sue to have parental rights terminated. What is wrong with you? Seriously, have you no sense of empathy or decency or humanity? There is something seriously not okay. So go, take a time out, think about what you've done, and don't come back until you're willing to fix it. How's your heart rate? Good? All right. So let's move on to a state that has turned stripping women of their autonomy rights into a sport of Olympic proportion. Texas. Legislature. Matt Schaefer, who recently put forward an amendment that would force women to carry non-viable and unsustainable pregnancies to term, even if it was against the best practices of the hospital and the medical wishes and advice of their doctors. When asked about legitimate medical health ramifications of the mother, such as, sepsis, this guy noted that, and I quote, "Suffering has been part of the human condition since sin entered the world." Texas. Okay, wow. Just wow. So despite having the technology available to save a woman's life, should she face a non-viable pregnancy that poses an imminent danger to her life, that dude in this state don't think she should be able to access it because women should still be paying for Eve's follies. I'd like to note that also means that you are accepting a Judeo-Christian origin story. Now, if this sounds a little bit deja vu-y, it should, and that's because it's a spin on what happened to Marlise Munoz. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this case, Marlise Munoz was the Texas woman who was pregnant when in November of 2013 she suffered from a pulmonary embolism and collapsed. Her husband found her some 3 to 4 hours later and rushed her to the emergency room where she was declared brain dead. She was completely dead. Now, Marlise Munoz had no written advance directive, but had spoken to her husband, friends, and family saying that she didn't want to be on artificial life support. That's not how she wanted to live. Both she and her husband were in the medical field. They were paramedics, EMTs, and weren't interested in going forward with that sort of emotional trauma. So they pulled the plug, right? No, of course not, because this is Texas, and Texas has this law that makes it so, can you guess why? Because Marlise Munoz was pregnant, she did not have the power to act out her own directives. So Texas, yes indeed Texas, has a law that essentially distills a woman's body down to nothing more than a human incubator, even if that woman is dead. You may think I'm being a little bit hyperbolic and that things like this are chance occurrences that don't possibly happen in the real world. And they're rare, right? Let me present to you Exhibit B. Alabama, where the district attorney filed suit in an effort to terminate the parental rights of a pregnant inmate in order to make it so that she could not try to get a termination of her pregnancy. Now, eventually, the woman was coerced to follow through with the pregnancy and forego the abortion anyway. But let's say Alabama had succeeded. Let's follow this argument to its logical conclusion. Alabama gets custody rights of the unborn child. The mother now does not own what is inside her body, and she is essentially incubating and a vessel for a ward of the state for 9 months. What year is this, and when did indentured servitude come back into style? Because here's the thing. We as a society have got to stop paying lip service to the idea of treating women as intelligent, autonomous, and equal human beings. Because this image isn't okay, even when it looks like this. So please, if anything I have said to you has resonated even remotely, check out the content, explore it further, and join the conversation on Twitter at #NotEvenRemotelyFeministActivist.